Hello and welcome back to another Blu-ray review. This is kind of part two of three, covering the Prison Walls Abashiri Prison 1 through 3 box set from Eureka, the Masters of Cinema collection, spine number 285, 86, and 87, I think. Let me just double check that. Yes. So this film, also from 1965, is the sequel to Abashiri Bangaichi. So this is Zoku Abashiri Bangaichi, another Abashiri prison story, or Abashiri Prison Continues, or also known in, I believe, the United States release, The Green Ball Mystery. So this was rushed into production. The first film was a success, kind of launched Ken Takakura into kind of real solid stardom. He'd been making films for a long time at Toei, I believe, and played kind of well-meaning but not the brightest of characters. And in this series, his role as Shinichi Tachibana is as this young yakuza who, again, is well-meaning, but he has that air of coolness about him I talked about in the first part, where he just he exudes just kind of a calm, collected, almost zen kind of state, where, I don't know, you just feel like you could go into a rough bar with him and you'd be fine in almost any circumstance. He feels tough, but there is a softness to him as well. As we saw in the first film, he really is just a guy who's yearning for his mother. And this film picks up in color this time, because the first one was in black and white for budgetary reasons. They weren't really banking on the first Abashiri Bangaichi film to be a big success. But it was successful, and so they gave the director Teruo Ishii a week to write the film, the sequel follow-up, and 2 weeks to film it. I think it's something like the first film, Abashiri Bangaichi, came out in April '65. The sequel, Zoku Abashiri Bangaichi, came out in July. So was it like April, May, June, like 4 months turnaround? Kind of just under 4 months. Crazy, absolutely crazy. And then the series just eventually became like production line, like episodic kind of movies, really. But the film's in color. There's a bit more oomph behind it. And in the first film, and at least the second and third film, I'm not aware of any further details of the further films. Ken Takakura also sings the theme song, Abashiri Bangaichi. So that's interesting. There's a very, very deep register to that opening theme song. And I think there's another couple of songs as well that he sings. And this is something that they often would do back then to kind of make more money, sell some records. And that was also a big seller, was the song that he had recorded specifically for the film series. So that kind of helped along with the success of the series in general, I think. So the film opens with him out of prison. And that's the interesting thing. 2 and 3, no prison. Yeah, Abashiri Prison, again, they're not called Abashiri Prison, but still, that's when you start the series like that, Abashiri has to kind of be in the title of the movie. There's no point in the film where you go to Abashiri. It's in another place in Japan. I forget where, because there's two different locations for 2 and 3. And I did like that. It didn't feel like it was a cheaply made sequel in that regard. It's on location, and you get to see lots of different places. And the third film, I really love the location of. That's in Kyushu, I think. But I forget the exact location of the second film. But the implication is he's just got out of Abashiri, out of the prison. He's with a former inmate, one of his friends from the prison. They're out together, and he's basically trying to rehabilitate his life. And right at the beginning, they're at kind of the port, and there's another prisoner, I think, and there's this group of women who go past, and they find out this guy's a prisoner, basically, a criminal. And they're all like, oh, they're all fussing around. Can we take a picture of them and stuff? It just made me think of like influencer culture. It just made me think of like, wow, that's like really ahead of its time in terms of just like, there's some kind of subsect of society who just see controversy or like something bad, and they're like, oh my god, let me take a picture with it. Let me get a shot of it. Let me get a clip for my vlog. It's just the Logan Paul effect. Dead body in the woods, let's film it and put it on YouTube and stuff, and then make the apology video. But these girls coming in, oh, let's take a picture with the prisoner. That just kind of was interesting to me. But we have Another guy who was, I wasn't sure if he was meant to be the same character as he was in the first film. Otsuki is the character's name, played by Kuni Tanaka, a very distinctive looking guy whose teeth reminded me a little bit of Ken Dodd, but he kind of is. He's kind of he's got this prison guard, this prison officer under his thumb at the beginning of the movie, and he's making all these demands and stuff, and you later learn that he's admitted to a crime he didn't commit, and so because he's going to testify, he's getting perks and he's getting taken out of prison, and he can have this food and stuff. And eventually, when he learns he's going to go on death row because he's committing to this murder, he's like, "Oh no, I didn't do it. I didn't do it." And that's it. And you never see him again. And it just felt like such a strange use of screen time. But Ishii had a week to write the film, so that's interesting. And also to see what's interesting to me is that like, Teruo Ishii had many films under his belt by the time he'd finished his career, of course. But most of them he wrote. And I believe that was kind of against the norm, especially when these films are being, pumped out at a rapid pace. But he did write, most of his films, from what I understand, which is an interesting note. I should note not to use the word interesting so much, but what can I say? It is kind of intriguing to me that he, I don't know whether that was a personal thing where he felt like if I'm directing the film, I need to be the voice of it, but regardless, not a lot of time to put this film together, which may be why a lot of people don't really look too fondly on this one. I really enjoyed this film. It's not a great film, the weakest of the three by far, for sure, but I enjoyed the kind of the caper quality of it. So that Tachibana's there, and Otsuki's there. They get on the ferry. There's all the women, and they turn out to be strippers, and that one of them is a dancer who has a husband and a young infant son who he has in a backpack the whole time, and the son eventually gets kind of sick, and that leads to a very memorable sequence, I would say, and also a really evocative sequence in which the mother of this child and the wife of the husband, she has a dance sequence in a club. And at first I bought into the visual that I'm seeing a man and a woman embracing, but she's wearing half a suit and half of a kind of elaborate outfit, and it looks like a man and a woman, and she's kind of embracing herself. I thought it was just a really cool piece of like art. Like I just loved the look of it, and it was interesting psychologically. I don't know, it was just a cool visual, and her character was pretty I wouldn't say impactful, but like she certainly commands the attention on the screen when she's in the movie, because like there's a sequence where she takes her clothes off because she's just gambling away everything in this very memorable gambling sequence, actually, where all the characters seem to converge, which is really cool. But it starts with her just not being able to let go of gambling, and her husband says like, don't go to a gambling place afterwards, but that's where she goes. She puts all her money down. She loses it. Okay, I'll bet my kimono. She takes all her clothes off, and it becomes this big scene, and then other things happen. But she's a brazen kind of character, and so whenever she's in a scene, she's very much the focal point of what's going on, and so she kind of was quite a memorable part. That's another word, memorable. I keep using that one. Then there's Michiko Saga playing Yumi, who's a pickpocket who Tachibana is onto right away. He kind of bumps into her getting off the ferry, I think, and he realizes what she's up to straight away, and she becomes a fun love interest for him. I think I like the moment where she finally tells him that she's falling in love with him. It's kind of a cute moment, but and that was that's part of the scene where, and it's very kind of like, oh, this is a coincidence, but Tachibana and Yumi, they're kind of running away from someone, because the whole film is about this green algae ball, this imitation algae ball, which a nun has on the ferry. Follow me with this. And the box opens, or it falls over, I think, and the balls fall out. And she tries to get them all back, but one of the balls goes missing, and Tachibana's friend picks it up and just puts it in his pocket. Oh, I'll have that. But he doesn't know that there are jewels, stolen jewels, hidden inside that ball. So that becomes the MacGuffin of the movie. So now Tachibana, Yumi, and his friend, they have this very, this hot, like object that everyone is after. And so then we have the reintroduction of Yoda, of Toru Abe's character from the first film, who's inexplicably out of prison and running things as kind of a mob boss, Yakuza boss. and he wants that ball because he was he orchestrated the robbery, which you see at the beginning of the movie of the jewels and stuff. And yeah, everyone's after it, and there's a sequence on a train. It gets passed between people. I loved all those like caper stuff, kind of like a heist movie without the heist. You kind of have the heist at the very beginning in the opening scene with the jewels, but there's actually just a very minor thing. There's a bit where these two guys, the thieves, they're breaking into the safe, and a security guard comes up, and I think they shoot him, and just the way he's like, ah. And then he throws himself off the balcony. Yeah, there's one of those movie conceits sometimes where it's like, can you fall off a balcony convincingly? I'll give it a go. Ah, and just jumps, and it's like, no time for take two. We'll just leave it. I had to rewind that and watch it again because it was pretty phony, but I find the joy in little kind of unconvincing moments like that. But a moment that is the opposite of that and is very convincing and very well done is when Tachibana is introducing himself to a Yakuza gang, kind of offering his services, and a guy comes over and just starts slapping the shit out of him. And he's just like, bang, bang, bang. Tachibana's got a busted lip, and eventually he just no-sells all the hits and just says, is that what you got? Just this absolute, like, badass moment. And he's like, anyone who's stronger than that? It's just, that's one of those great moments for the character that I just absolutely loved. I mean, he's just ice cold. It's awesome. But as I say, it's all about this green algae ball and the jewels. And I found myself thinking, like, okay, there was so many of these balls. Why wouldn't they just, the bad guys, just let that one go? But I think it's kind of a classical part of any villain where, like, he will hunt down his spoils to the last penny. So it worked for me in that sense. But at some point, Tachibana and Yumi, they're kind of on the run, and they end up hiding in a hospital. And they come across the father of the stripper with his young son, and he says, "Oh yeah, my son's really sick, but we can't afford the medication. We have to apply for a medical card, and maybe we'll get something." And Tachibana's like, "Well, we can't be having this. If the boy's sick, he needs to be treated. Take me back into the doctor." And he basically strong arms this doctor into be like, "So you're not gonna give this boy medicine when he could die, And it was like this really honorable moment, and this is where it kind of blends into the Ninkyo Yakuza genre, where when I think of the Yakuza film, I think of like people with short knives stabbing each other, just carnage, bloodshed, and just ruthlessness from some of the films I've seen or heard of, like the Battles Without Honor and Humanity series. But before that, it was really the Ninkyo kind, which the chivalry, where the Yakuza characters, they operate kind of ruthlessly anyway, but under a code of honor, and that just makes you think of like the Bushido code and the samurai honor and all that kind of stuff. And it's basically a different version of that, and that's historical. But Tachibana is the chivalrous, honorable Yakuza, and so it's a nice scene, I think, when he kind of makes sure the doctor treats the boy anyway. And in that gambling sequence, you get to see Kanjuro Arashi again as Oni Tora from the first film. And it's weird because seeing him in black and white, then seeing him in color, the hair just looked weird to me. I was expecting like white, gray hair. So when he turned up, I was like, oh, is that the actor from the first film? Is it the same character? Now, he's named the same character, but he was doing like 21 years, or at least he had a lot more years left to serve. This is where I realized, okay, because I'm a big fan of the Zatoichi series, which is like 25 films. And I'd hoped going through those films there would be some level of continuity. There really isn't. You just have the character and a revolving, kind of cycle of characters who serve mostly the same purposes with different, inflections and different variations. But ultimately you don't get things that carry over that much. And you do get actors who are in these films again and again and again as either very different characters or very similar characters, but they're not playing the same one. And so in this film, you have Toru Abe as Yoda, Kanjuro Arashi as Onitora from the first film, but they're kind of not the same characters because it doesn't make sense for them to be out of prison. if that makes any kind of sense. Of course, it doesn't. That's the whole point, is that it doesn't make any kind of sense. And I wish that it did. But you just got to let it go, I suppose. But he is a great actor and a great presence. And so when he shows up, and it's the classic gambling scene from a film like this, where the dealer's crooked and it gets found out. And yeah, there's a really cool sequence. And then, Onitora becomes a bit of an ally for Tachibana. And it all heads to this really great knockdown, drag 'em out fight between Ken Takakura and Toru Abe literally down dirty in the mud. It's a really fun kind of scrap. That's something I should have mentioned about the first film, actually. There's a fight between Gonda and Tachibana in the snow when they're chained together. Things reach a boiling point when they're just literally stuck, joined at the wrist, and they have a fight. And it's just such a great, not a movie fight at all. It's a scrap. It's a proper, it's messy. It's like a real fight. I loved that. I loved the staging of it. I don't know whether that was a conscious decision, whether it was just we have no money for choreography, just, and then they fight, but it worked out great. I think it was a really effective fight sequence. It's pretty similar in the second film too, the final fight. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the film a lot. There's a character who kind of is on the fringe. He kind of pops up every now and then. You first meet him on the train, and Tony Raines calls him a bisexual character. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Bisexual. But he does say to Tachibana, he's like, I always get what I want, whether it's from a man or a woman. And I just kind of didn't read anything sexual into that. But maybe there's something to it. And I don't know, there was kind of an ambiguity to that I retrospectively found interesting. But the sequel, definitely not on the level of the first film. And but I like the characters, and that really helps in films like this where maybe the plot isn't. But again, I like the plot. I thought it was interesting. There's some really dramatic moments where Yumi gets captured by Yoda and his men, and Tachibana's got to try and rescue her, and it's a good film. I really enjoyed it. That's pretty much all I have to say. The commentary on this one was by Chris Poggiali, and I still feel bad. I didn't trash, but I kind of criticized his commentary on the Samurai Wolf set at the beginning of the year, and I just remember feeling bad about it. But so I was bracing myself when I was going to listen to this one. Did I not like his commentary before? Let's see what it's like here. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed his commentary. Much like in the Samurai Wolf commentaries, he talked about how Toei's foreign output was very successful in Hawaii, and I found that kind of interesting. But he talks about how, again, this film's pretty derided in the series and stuff, and I just enjoyed his talk. He kind of talks about the frustrations again of characters reappearing who the continuity is just very threadbare, I really enjoyed this, and he had lots of interesting things to say about the actors and the people who are in this one, because obviously with the first film, you have those actors. In the second film, there's a whole host of new actors, and so there's more kind of life stories to hear, and I just enjoy hearing that stuff. It's really cool. But my favorite part was when he talks about, I guess, kind of the trashy nature of some of the stories of these films and stuff, but how his mother, I forget what the actual series was called, but he said that his mother would get these kind of trashy novels, basically romance novels, I think. And he said that she would have a big box of them, and she put aside the ones that she liked the most and put them in a box, and then would reread them every now and then. And he says it's the same thing for him with movies, only the box is his apartment, which I thought was a great line and kind of very apt to people like us who are literally, filling our houses with movies. So that was a very sweet little story. I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed this commentary as well quite a bit. So that's the second film, Zoku Abashiri Bangaichi. So join me for the third and final part of this review, where I'll talk about the third film, and then talk about the other extras on the Blu-ray, show you the booklet, the packaging, we'll round off this whole thing. But yeah, I really enjoyed this series, and I'm looking forward to talking about the third one. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.